All right, Adam, tell us about the UMass UConn women's field hockey. I know it was a tough one for UConn, but you had the call, so tell us what you saw.
Yeah, UConn got out to a 1-0 lead. Their freshman, Yule Sauer, one of the incredible freshmen from the Netherlands, cashed in on a penalty corner. So midway through the first, it was 1-0. UConn's goalie, Natalie McKenna, made a couple of good saves when she needed to. Really like a save in the first, one in the second, one in the third. So it wasn't as if UMass was applying a whole bunch of pressure. But then in the fourth quarter, UConn just hadn't broken through for another goal. And UMass tied it up about midway through the fourth quarter and then came up with the game winner with about 5.5 minutes left. And UConn just was never able to muster much offense after halftime. And that's not surprising. UMass is one of the better defensive teams in the country. It was a 1-0 game between these two teams back on October 20th that UConn won on a penalty stroke. So it wasn't as if UConn was necessarily they never looked overly strong in either game in a sense, but here today they had the lead, and just UMass they played a heck of a fourth quarter, and based on that, you feel like they earned to move on to the 7th Elite Eight in program history.
Another great season, though, for UConn field hockey. The losses were, the Providence one, I think, was the surprising one you were telling us about, but Syracuse and then Harvard, the other two that are in this pod as far as the field hockey NCAAs are going. So UMass will play the winner of those. You're calling that game coming up?
Yes, to pull back the curtain for people. That game's at 2:30 Eastern, so we're chatting a little bit before when the folks will hear this. But yes, that game starting at 2:30 Eastern. So as we talk right now, we don't know the result of that, but that game will be final once most folks hear this conversation.
Now, the women's soccer team, they have to go on the road to start their NCAAs. They will play tomorrow at Rutgers. What can you tell us about this Rutgers team, or what can you tell us about the chances of UConn women's soccer making a little run here in the NCAAs?
The Big Ten is just really good, and that's the bottom line when it comes to soccer. So, that's adding some really strong programs out of the Pac-12 into the Big Ten, and it's just a really good conference that's gotten even better. UConn squared up against a Wisconsin team earlier this year, and Wisconsin beat UConn 2-1. And so that's really one of the only crossover touch points that you can have to kind of figure out how this matchup will go. I think that this is a UConn team that is playing some of its better soccer right now, and they're doing it. Not to say it's without Chioma Okafor, their All-American from last year, but she hasn't been contributing in the score column over the last couple of games, which when you're winning, that's great. When your best player is not scoring and you're winning those games still, then you're loving that. And so I would really, really look for Chioma Okafor to step up in the biggest game of her team this season, and UConn's first NCAA tournament game since 2016. It's been 8 years for a storied program.
Talking to Adam Giardino, UConn Sports Network. UConn women play tonight. We will get knocked off the air at 5:30 tonight here on our show. 6 o'clock in Greensboro, North Carolina versus 14th ranked North Carolina. Your thoughts, first test for the UConn women's of 2024?
Saw Kim Adams, who's a respected voice of women's basketball, specifically in terms of the Big East coverage and Fox Television, and she said that she feels like, based on her first blush with this UConn roster, that the bench players could make the Sweet 16. And obviously early in the year and a long way to go and all of that. But I think that's true, and that goes without UConn having a lot of its depth, with A.Z. Fudd still out, Ayanna Patterson, a bunch of players that will contribute as this year goes on, especially, of course, A.Z. Fudd, who at her best is an All-American candidate. So for UConn, I think that we've seen a lot of really good things that should be encouraging, and I think that the biggest litmus test here today will be Ice Brady. I want to see what she's able to do against better competition.
Yeah.
She's somebody that at this stage of her career needs to take a step forward. No one's labeling anyone as a disappointment or underperforming or what have you, but by the time you get to this stage of your career, it's okay. Yeah, you've dealt with some injuries and limited minutes, and now the training wheels are up. And so here's a big opportunity where, if she has a good game for herself, it would obviously be important for UConn trying to win against a top 15 team on the road. but what it would do for her confidence and just knowing that, okay, I am the player that I think I am, and just being able to see that under the bright lights tonight.
Adam Giardino, UConn Sports Network. Typically, he's roaming the sidelines on Saturdays, but UConn is playing BYE this week. That's a bye. Their next game will be against Syracuse next Saturday, where you'll see Adam walking the sidelines. But go back to that UAB game. Fourth quarter, 21 points, biggest comeback for this team in a long time. A win got them their first winning season since 2010. What were the sidelines like in the fourth quarter when they were about to start that comeback?
It was, in hindsight, it's easy to say it was inevitable, and but even Jim Morris said in our post-game conversation that he didn't think it was inevitable. He said something to the effect of, when I talked to you at halftime, I didn't think we'd be having this kind of conversation post-game, because he put it on the players and said, guys, there's nothing I can do to help you right now that, and that's obviously not to say that the coaches were calling a perfect game or anything like that. But the thing that was missing in the first half against UAB in Jim Moore's mind was the players just wanting it. And we've heard that a lot from him, that, it's guys that just need to find a way to make it happen. And they forced some turnovers. And sometimes you get lucky with turnovers. There's no doubt about that. But there were opportunities to make plays, and sometimes that weird-shaped ball bounces the wrong way. And this time, a couple of those fumbles that seemed to be getting covered up by other teams this year, UConn was able to cover them up and directly leading to some opportunities. So that was my vantage point, was just the momentum. And, UConn scored 2 touchdowns in – I wish I had the number, because it's been a week. You can't memorize everything. 2 touchdowns in 17 seconds?
Yeah.
That right?
Yeah.
So it was, those had to be the 2 fastest touchdowns in the history of the program. We say anecdotally without knowing for sure, but certainly there couldn't be 2. Even if you recover an onside kick and score on back-to-back play, that was as fast 2 touchdowns as you're going to have. Just out of nowhere in some ways, but also deserve it, because I think there have been other moments this season where UConn football has put itself in position to be the benefactor of some 50-50 luck, and they didn't get it, and I think they got the benefit of that. Plus, honestly, there were a couple of reviews that I don't want to say the officials got the review wrong because it benefited UConn, but in real time, in the review that I got to see, the replays, it just didn't feel like the call was going to go UConn's way, and then the guy came out of the replay monitor, and sure enough, UConn got the benefit of the call. So we'll see how that carries over to next week up at Syracuse.
Let's talk a little men's basketball real quick with the Lemoyne, second year in Division I. We beat them 90-49. Some of your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, not too much of a measuring stick, but I think it was nice to see the guys go 0 for 9 from beyond the three-point arc to begin the game and just keep shooting. And that they didn't. It's easy to say that against Lemoyne. If you go 0 for 9 to begin a game against Creighton, do you panic? Do you change your game plan? What do you do? Or But I think what we saw a UConn team that knew it was better than its opponent, didn't stray from its game plan, and ultimately on a day where they probably could have scored more points, they, especially in the first half, they still committed to defense. And so I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of value in that. And Dan Hurley is going to have a lot of things on tape that he gets to work on. So, it's the best of both worlds for the head coach.
I've been looking for something to do this weekend. I think I found it at the Toscano Family Ice Forum tonight. Whoa, what a game is happening in our backyard. Boston College, number 2 in the entire nation for their men's hockey team, takes on the Ice Boss of UConn at Toscano tonight. Puck drops at 7 o'clock. What are the chances, Adam? What are the chances? This Boston College team's awesome. I think they're 7-1. They're always awesome. Probably got a bunch of NHL drafted players on their team. What are the chances the Ice Butts walks away with the win tonight? Skates away.
Yeah, I think better than last year. And UConn gave BC a heck of a time twice at Conti Forum last year in some really thrilling, high-scoring games. I think they were both 5-4 losses to the Eagles. And so, yeah, I think this year, this is a UConn team that isn't out of it until the game is over. But I think frustratingly for fans and for the team that at 5 wins, 5 losses, and a tie at this point, that there's that record is not reflective of how well they've played. But at the end of the day, your record is your record, and so much in the way that we're just talking about field hockey having a bounce back year at the beginning of this conversation. The men's hockey team could be having a bounce back year this year, except you just leave some points on the table when you give up a last-minute goal to UMass, you give up a last-second goal to Vermont, and so an outright win in conference play turns into an overtime win, or in UMass's case, a regulation victory turns into a shootout loss. And those matter on the margins when it comes to the conference standings, but those things matter on the margins with team confidence. And so, tonight, a win against Boston College, I want to say, it would turn the whole season around, but I think it would make the sky a little bit bluer heading into Saturday for that men's hockey team getting a real signature win.
Adam, always great. We know you got a call coming back, so have a great call in the women's field hockey. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you next week.